It's just growing like crazy down here. And I think the big difference in the food scene is just it's leveled up.
Welcome to Tampa's Table, a culinary journey. My name is Jeff Hauk. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for the 1905 family of restaurants here in Tampa. My guest today is Jennifer Bingham, sommelier, owner, operator of Cru Cellars in Tampa and many other concepts, and we'll talk about how her business has grown. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
So glad you're here today. I think the first time I made contact with you, I was a food writer for the Tampa Tribune, and you had just opened Cru Cellars like not long after, like 2010 or so.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I was just so impressed because you had found this little nest in South Tampa. What got you started in building your empire? How did Cru Cellars come about?
It came about in 2010. I had recently moved to Tampa from Chicago in 2009, and I had been in the wine business there and just was curious about eventually having the opportunity to do my own thing. But when I got to Tampa, I was a wine rep for a little bit, and it gave me a lay of the land of Tampa and the wine scene here at that time. And coming from Chicago, working with like small production wines, I could totally see like a place for the types of places I had worked at in Chicago. And I met the former owner of where Cru is now in MacDill. It was this little wine shop that was run by an Italian guy. And he was just ready to move on, and I could see the potential in what Cru could be there. So
okay, coming from Chicago to Tampa, two very different food scenes at that time.
Yeah,
still, but they all have their own thing, and Chicago is very well known for its cuisine. Tell me what kind of wine scene as you saw it when you got here versus what it's become in the 13 years since then.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. When I got here, Burns was a huge deal, and it still is. I love Burns and love that you can go there and have like a $30 bottle of Beaujolais from the 80s and an awesome steak. So Burns was kind of intimidating, and it's such an institution, but it was really just that. And I would say Wine Exchange was the only real wine bar at the time. And so there was a ton of space, a ton of opportunity kind of in between that, like most amazing wine cellar in the world that Burns is, and an institution as well, to some extent, Wine Exchange. And we kind of came right in the middle of that, I think, like showing smaller production family wines that aren't necessarily like collectible, but more wines that you can drink every day.
I remember going into the shop, and the service that you had was so personal, and it was almost like I had my own little wine concierge.
Oh,
and asking you like, what do you like? What do you usually drink? How are you going to use this kind of thing? And it just felt like we were connecting to a dot that would say, okay, that's the bottle. And then there's a couple others if you want to try it.
Yes.
You didn't have food at first.
We only had cheese and charcuterie at first.
And then you built in a food program. How did that happen? And what did you decide to do in terms of the path of the food on the menu?
Yes. So it was just me in the front of house serving tables, and my husband making cheese plates, but mostly doing dishes in the back. To this day, he does not like washing wine glasses.
Thank Tori. Thank you for the dishwashing.
Because he was like hand washing the wine glasses at first. But I came directly from Chicago. I had worked at a wine bar that was literally what I was trying to open. It was just wine and cheese. And I did not have a restaurant background. So I did what I knew. And Tampa wasn't really urban enough at that time to have people think like, oh, I can just go here for wine and cheese and then go somewhere else for dinner. Like, they wanted food, and it was a huge opportunity for us to increase our revenue. So we slowly over the first couple of years realized that we needed to have a full kitchen. So
you were one of the first places I remember that had charcuterie. And in 2010, it doesn't sound like that long ago, but that's how fast things have changed. It's like 7-Eleven has charcuterie now. You know what I mean? Not the same, obviously, but the appreciation that you had for the wine experience, because you had tastings, you had classes, you had all this kind of how you live your life through wine kind of thing that made it more about the lifestyle than it was about just the bottle.
Oh, I love that you said that. Yeah, we really strive for that. Like, I always say wine every day. It's just part of your life.
So, obviously you're in the business of it. How do you live your life through wine? What is it that it adds to your life?
I think cocktails are becoming really popular right now, and I certainly love starting with a cocktail, but wine, more than any other beverage, just has so much complexity to it. Just when you're drinking it, all of the different layers that it provides. And a lot of times if I haven't had wine in a while and I just like am tasting a lot of stuff, I'm just, gosh, wine is so good. Like I just love it.
It's okay to have fun, you know?
Yeah.
I don't have to sit here and go to wine college. I can actually just enjoy it and relax. And
Yeah.
I look at wine, I know this is probably not analogous, but I love cigars, and I happen to live in a great cigar town.
Yeah.
But I think of cigars not as cigars, but as a dedication of time. It's an element of time that I'm dedicating myself. And I think about a glass of wine the same way. It's like, I don't pour a glass of wine because I'm on the way to the gym or I'm doing something else. It's I'm giving myself this block of time to enjoy all the flavors and the conversation or whatever it is. And that's really, I think, what you fostered at Cru was the sense of community there. And I don't know how you experience that on a day-to-day basis, but it seems like that it's so much more than just retail.
Yes, we aim to do that from the beginning. I think, people naturally connect over a glass of wine. And if you're in the process of kind of learning more about wine, there's a lot to discuss about, the different components of it and where it came from. And we started Cru in a very educational way, I think maybe to get people to come in, but we've always had classes and tastings and trying to teach people more about wine because there's so much to know. Obviously, I don't know everything about wine. It's just a continual learning process. So we love sharing that journey.
But you're a sommelier.
I am.
That's not an easy process.
No.
What did you learn by going through that process about wine that you didn't know when you started?
Well, now I'm thinking back like 15 years or so because I passed all my certified exams and stuff in Chicago before I moved here. But yeah, I mean, it involves everything like geography, geology. I just went to a wine conference in northern Michigan of all places, but I learned even so much more being in the industry 20 years now about just like the vine health. And there's just so many subjects that wine encompasses that you can never know all of it.
There's a young woman at where I work who is sort of studying for it and has basically started a series of Thursday night wine tastings, blind wine tastings. We all bring a bottle.
Nice.
We try and identify what the flavors are,
That's
trying to identify where we think it came from in the world.
Are you good at it?
I am horrible at it.
It's so hard.
It is hard, but it's fun hard because you're always surprised. And it's like, oh, okay, it might taste like grapefruit. It might have a little green apple in it. It might have this. I'm like, oh, I'm a red wine guy. Okay, well then what is that? Where's the tannins and all this stuff? And I think there's a lot of people who are intimidated by wine. How do you keep that intimidation factor low? Because I remember, like I said, coming into your store and feeling like it was very personal. How do you keep people from being freaked out because they see all these bottles and like, I don't know what I'm looking at first. I don't know where to start. Oh, that one has a kangaroo on the label. I'll buy that. How do you keep that intimidation factor low?
I think there's a lot of ways. I think when you come in and you're shopping in the retail, we just start with like, what do you like or what are you looking for? If you like Pinot Noir, we can certainly show you Pinot Noirs, but if you want to try something new, like here's a Frappato from Sicily. So we can kind of meet you where you are, but then on the wine list, like if you're sitting in the wine bar, I've tried to take the descriptions of each glass away before, but I hate it. Like I love explaining each glass on the menu. So usually that's really approachable, like kind of the same thing. If you like Pinot Noir, you might like this. Try this Gamay. I'm obsessed with Beaujolais. We'll probably talk about that more than once today. So always trying to push stuff like that on people.
Sure. Yeah, it's very much, I think, if you want to call it a hobby, that rewards you. The more that you try and the more variety you try, it sort of sets up your sense of, well, not only what I like, but what I can pair it with.
Yes.
And then also, what's the occasion and, what's the expectation of what other people are going to be bringing as well. And it's just so many permutations. I know that people can get, like I said, a little freaked out by all the options. There was a $12 bottle of wine that my wife and I found. I'm gonna say the C word of Costco. We found a $12 bottle of wine and we drank that for probably 3 or 4 years as our house wine. We'd have maybe a glass or two every week.
Yeah.
And that was our gateway into thinking of wine as a lifestyle component. And then that made us want to go to other stores and other places. And it's sort of like, I realized it didn't matter how you got there
Mhm.
as long as you rewarded your curiosity by being a little bit more adventurous.
Yes, I
And you
love
don't have
that.
to, it doesn't have to be a $200 bottle,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. It's okay if it is, if it's a special occasion, but it is just such a fun adventure of flavor.
It is. Yes.
What do you love most about it?
About wine. I think you said that you bought a case for yourself
Yeah,
that you fell in love with. And I did that once. I've like found this bottle that I was like, I should just get a case of it, which I don't usually do because I have so much of a
right.
selection at Cru. And I hated it. I hated drinking the same wine every night. So for me, it's about exploring new things. Even if you find something that you love,
Sure.
there's so much else out there to try. So I think it's just exploring new things all the time.
So you started with Cru Cellars on MacDill. Tell me a little bit about how you built up to where you are now with your company.
Yeah, Cru and MacDill opened in 2010. So we're in our 14th year now, which sounds crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah. So we did that for a while, and I had a couple kids. And then in 2018, we opened Cru at Armature Works, which was a huge opportunity for our
Right.
small brand.
Totally different audience.
Yeah,
And it was more of a wine bar, correct?
just a bar. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had bottles, but they were more like to have there.
Right.
So yeah, it was a huge opportunity. We were just a neighborhood spot in Palmacia. Then all of a sudden, more people from around Tampa and outside of Tampa, because it's a tourist attraction, were finding Cru. So, and it was super busy. So it was a great opportunity for our brand to grow in general, and definitely brought us to where we are today to be able to open other brands.
So the other brands that you're talking about, you're in the process of opening an Italian concept.
Yes.
I know you had Cru in West Shore, and that you're sort of evolving into an Italian thing. Tell me about the new brands.
Yes, so Cru at West Shore opened in a couple of years ago, 2021,
Mhm.
and we really want to go back to just the one original Cru now that we're moving away from Armature Works. And that neighborhood, the Cru at West Shore, was so different, such a different feel. And that neighborhood is loving the Italian wines that we have on that menu. We just see those as very popular there and wanting more of a food forward concept. So we love Italian food. I mean, who doesn't love good pizza and pasta?
Please.
And I also love like the Mediterranean style of like small plates. We had a Cru trip to Spain last year. So
Why
we're
are the air
taking
quotes with?
Cru,
Oh, I see what you're
CREW.
saying.
We
Cru.
call ourselves the Cru
Sorry, the
Crew.
wordplay escaped me. I haven't had enough caffeine.
So
you
we went to
Where did you go?
Spain.
You went to Spain.
Yeah, to Madrid and Ribera del Duero, which was awesome. And so you'll see a little bit of a Spanish inspiration on that menu as well from that trip.
Yeah, it's that whole coastal area is just so ripe for great wines. I remember falling down the wine well. I think my gateway was Sangiovese.
Oh,
See, when I grew up, there was Lancers and Matus and Chianti, and that was it.
Yeah.
You might get a big jug of something that had Gallo at the name of it. But that was it. That was as fancy as it got. And when my father brought Lancers home that you had to like literally uncoil, we thought we were really, really big deal. So I guess it was about 20 years ago, I got into Italian wines, and again, Sangiovese, and it's so drinkable. And I have Italian DNA, which makes me even more susceptible. But that got me into Barolo and kind of exploring. And there's like a little trail of breadcrumbs. It's like we were talking about. If you like this, then try this, and then try that. And Italian wines are just so, I don't know, they're just so approachable, I think.
yes, definitely.
What is it? If you were going to say a gateway Italian wine to try that maybe people haven't tried before, which one would you suggest? Is there a style?
I think Chianti and Sangiovese is a natural starting point because people kind of know it. But I love Sicilian wine, and I know I already mentioned one of them. I think Sicilian wine is a good gateway if you're used to drinking more New World wine because it has the best of both worlds. It's more fruit driven than other Italian wines and other Old World wines. So some of their native grapes to Sicily are like Frappato, Nerello Mascalese, Nero d'Avola. Nero d'Avola reminds me a little bit of like a Zinfandel. It has a lot of fruit to it.
Right.
But so they all have like fruit first, and then they still have that like Italian like dustiness and minerality. So that's like a really good starting point if you haven't had a lot of Italian wine. And then you can start moving north because Barolo and Nebbiolo is probably the most serious
Yeah.
of all of them.
Yeah, when we opened Casa Santo Stefano in Ybor in 2020,
all Sicilian, right?
250 Sicilian wines. And the reason was back in the 90s, Richard Gonsmart decided to rebuild the wine program at the Columbia and went with Spanish wines at a time when no one had any regard for Spanish wines. And then he's got this collection now, 25 years later, it's a big damn deal. He has the same bet about Sicilian wines. It's like they're not as well regarded as, say, Northern Italian wines or anything on the mainland. But he sees just amazing handcrafted labels that are coming out with these beautiful vineyards. The great thing I think about Sicilian wines is, and in wines in general, is that the next generation of winemakers and vintners tend to be women. And it's bringing a whole different sensibility to it in terms of flavor profiles and the whole, I guess, the 360 view. You know, men are very much, I want wine. There's a bottle of wine. I got wine. I'm going to drink wine. And I think, you know, to totally generalize, I think it's a much more rounded approach to wine. And I've seen that, you know, domestically as well as foreign. You know, it's all the Antinoris or the Gallos or whatever it is, you know, and that really, that excites me on what wine could be from that, especially in Italy where there's so much tradition.
Yeah.
But Sicilian wines really are underrated. They're very good price.
Yeah.
And they're very underrated because it's sort of like if you grow wine in Washington instead of Napa Valley.
Yeah.
Well, everybody wants Napa Valley, but Washington makes wonderful wines.
Yes.
You know? So what's your sense of how much has changed, say, in the past 5 years since the last cookbook came out, of Tampa's food scene in general? What has been the big change that you've noticed?
A lot more concepts have opened in Tampa in the last 5 years. I kind of think of it now as Armature Works opened in 2018, 5 years ago. They were one of the first big developments downtown. And then now we have Water Street. So it's just growing like crazy down here. And I think the big difference in the food scene is just it's leveled up. And Michelin's helped with that, but we were doing that already.
It was already in progress.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I noticed about 5 years ago, things were starting to take off. It kind of hit a little plateau, and then it took off again.
Yeah.
So you have Vela in West Shore, and you're also in Water Street in two different places. Can you talk about those concepts?
Yes. So we opened two concepts that are connected to each other in Water Street in early 2023. Small Giant is just kind of the neighborhood spot down there. It's a neighborhood bar and restaurant. We have Columbus, Ohio style pizza, which is where I'm from. Very thin crust, crispy. The cheese goes to the very end, and the pepperonis are like really yummy, crispy, cupped pepperonis. Really good burgers and stuff like that. And then connected to it, we have Wine on Water, which is the neighborhood wine shop, liquor store, and wine bar. There's not a lot of seating inside, but we have a great patio, so it's become kind of a wine bar hangout too for the neighborhood.
Yeah, I was there on a Tuesday night, and there were people who were sitting outside enjoying a couple glasses, and then you go into the restaurant. The restaurant was full on a Tuesday night, and I'm not saying just yours. I'm saying all of the neighboring restaurants were full.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, this is Tampa, and this is summer at the time. The first time I went in there. First of all, cheese until the ends should be a tagline. I mean, go as far as you need to go for the cheese. I'm giving that to you. But the pizza met my wife's pizza approval.
Yay.
But the part about it that got me was that this was the new neighborhood.
Yes.
You know, and your customers were neighbors. They're not just destination customers as they might be, say, in other parts of the city. This is a walkable place that people like to live, work, eat, play, do everything they have to do. What kind of trends have you noticed in Water Street that you haven't noticed in other places?
We set out to aim to be that neighborhood place. And for the wine shop there, we have Morgan as our manager there. So I think just having that wine conversation, it's such an intimate space. So she's like rotating the list a lot. Because we have so many regulars coming in many days a week, like she's a different wine list one day, and then a couple of weeks later it's a different, rotating like the inventory so you can always try something new. one of the things we're doing a lot of weekly programming there to kind of bring people in, and we're doing what we call the wine divvy on Mondays, where like if you come in and you buy a bottle and then I come in, I buy a bottle, we sit at a table and then we share it with whoever wants to like come that night and share their bottle. So we've had, dozen more people kind of there sharing different bottles. You get to try a bunch of different stuff. So just kind of like that neighborhood vibe and bringing people together there is what I've seen.
And the name for the restaurant, where did that come from?
Small Giant. It came from my family. It's kind of a nod to them. My dad called me Jen the Giant and my sister Small Giant.
Oh, okay.
So, and that had a better ring to it. So
Small Giant works.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Speaking of Small Giant, you have a dish on the menu there that's also in the cookbook.
Yes.
And can you talk about that?
Yes, the Kung Pao Brussels sprouts.
Oh my goodness, I dream about those things.
Me too.
I'm a late in life Brussels sprouts appreciator.
Me too.
My family used to eat them cream boiling bag when I was a kid, and I had a problem with it. And then I finally had them where they were grilled or charred, and they were just such a different profile. And then I had yours, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is like next level. Tell me about that dish.
Yeah, they're kind of sweet and spicy at the same time. Yeah, it's probably one of the only healthier things on our menu because we've got a lot of comfort food on that menu. But yeah, kind of that charred Brussels sprout with this like Kung Pao sweet spicy sauce. I usually get it as my side with a burger.
Okay.
So good.
Yeah, but people can eat it as a main if they ordered enough of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's an appetizer too, yeah.
Yeah. Where did the idea for it come from?
Kyle, our CEO, who is also a chef, he came up with it.
It's always good to have a hybrid kind of person
I know.
staff.
I was like, I think we need a vegetable on the menu. So he figured it out.
I like that. So the other dishes that you have in the cookbook include?
For boozy, we have a seared grouper with a champagne foam. So it's one of the most underrated dishes. It's super subtle. It's got kind of like a creamy champagne sauce on it. Just very delicate, elegant dish, kind of like champagne. So it goes really well with champagne. And then for Cru, we have our ceviche on there.
Okay. You mentioned Boozy, which is in Hyde Park Village.
Yes.
How much time had passed between you opening Hyde Park Village and Water Street?
Like 14 days.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I brought it up. How do you do that?
It wasn't planned that way, and it has been quite a year because of that. But we got through it. We're still getting through it. But it was a lot of planning and leading up to that.
And tell people a little bit about what Boozy is and what the goal is there.
Yeah, Boozy is in Hyde Park Village. It's a champagne and cocktail restaurant. So it started around bubbles in general. Like we at Cru do tons of wine tastings and educational events. And over the last 5 years, I just saw like all the sparkling wine events selling out. People are really interested in that. Coupled with like in the wine industry, we're seeing pretty much all major regions make a great sparkling wine. We have Pet Nat, which is kind of a newer, old but new category of sparkling wine, which is really fun and approachable.
You can tell I don't do a lot of sparkling. If I do, it's cava usually. But...
Yeah, because of Colombia.
So what is Pet
Nat? It's like Pétillant Naturel. It's actually the way that champagne used to be made. It's also called ancestral method. Okay. So it's how champagne was made by accident in the beginning because they were originally trying to control the bubbles. They didn't want the bubbles in champagne, but they were happening because when the yeast is in the wine and it starts fermenting and it gets too cold, they thought the fermentation was over, so they would bottle it. But then when it got warm again in the spring, the bubbles, it would start fermenting again. And so the bubbles were trapped in the bottle. So that's how they make Pet Nat. It's not 2 fermentations, it's just 1 finishing in the bottle.
I think I give you another tagline. Oops, I made champagne. There you go. Accidental champagne might be my next band name, I think. So when you're at home, what do you eat and drink for comfort?
Oh gosh. I drink a lot of light-bodied reds is what I enjoy drinking at home. So some people are saying chillable reds nowadays. I do drink my wines with a considerable chill, which my sister hates. She's like, why are you drinking your wine so cold? But I keep it in the fridge. I could take it out like 20, 30 minutes before I'm going to drink it. And that's the perfect temperature for me for a red wine. So I like light reds. I mean, Beaujolais, I have mentioned, is one of my favorites. Right. But then looking to New World, like I like some of these kind of new California wines with like Hardy Wallace has a lot of Mourvedres that are awesome. I love Cru Cellars has like some lighter Zinfandels and Valdegui and some different varieties like that.
And are these labels that are available at your retail places?
Yes, they are.
Okay, how about that? I love a circular tie-in. Nobody ever says I eat Count Chocula and Pabst Blue Ribbon, but I get it. I understand the industry that you're in. Well, it's been a pleasure having you as a guest, and thank you for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Be sure to check out our recipes in the cookbook and check out our other episodes that are online wherever you find podcasts. Thank you for joining us.